The rain-slicked streets of Asheville, North Carolina, glistened under the streetlights, the air thick with the scent of wet asphalt and pine. Harper Quinn stood frozen outside the corner cafe, her breath catching in her throat. 10 years. 10 damn years since she'd last seen Lila Monroe, and now there she was, through the fogged-up window, laughing with someone Harper didn't recognize. Her heart thudded, a traitor to the walls she'd built. She wasn't ready for this. Not for the way her chest ached, not for the memories flooding back like a dam breaking. Harper, 34, a journalist with a knack for chasing stories that cut too close to the bone, pushed open the cafe door. The bell jingled, sharp and accusing. Lila's laugh stopped mid-breath. Their eyes locked, and the world shrank to the space between them. Lila, 35, an artist whose paintings carried the weight of her quiet intensity, stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound was a gunshot in Harper's ears. "You," Lila whispered, her voice barely audible over the hiss of the espresso machine. Her blonde hair, longer now, spilled over her shoulders, catching the warm glow of the cafe's Edison bulbs. Harper's leather jacket creaked as she shifted, her short brown hair damp from the drizzle outside. She wanted to say something clever, something biting, but all that came out was a shaky, "Yeah, me." 10 years ago they'd been everything, two women in their 20s, reckless and in love, sharing a cramped apartment filled with takeout boxes and dreams. Harper's ambition had clashed with Lila's need for stability, and their breakup had been a screaming match that left scars. Harper fled to New York, chasing bylines. Lila stayed, painting her pain onto canvases that now hung in galleries across the South. "Why are you here?" Lila asked, her voice tight, like she was holding back a decade of questions. The stranger at her table, a woman with a sharp bob and a curious stare, glanced between them, sensing the air crackle. "Work," Harper lied, her fingers brushing the notebook in her pocket. She'd been sent to cover a local art festival, but she'd known Lila might be here. "Hoped maybe. Didn't expect to see you." Lila's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You always were a terrible liar." The cafe hummed with life. Clinking mugs, low chatter, the soft strum of a guitar from a speaker, but Harper only heard the thud of her own pulse. She stepped closer, close enough to smell Lila's familiar lavender perfume. "You look good," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Lila's eyes softened, but her voice stayed sharp. "Don't do that. Don't act like we're old friends catching up." "Then what are we?" Harper's voice broke, raw and unguarded. She hated how much she still cared, how one look at Lila unraveled her. Lila didn't answer. She just stared, her green eyes searching Harper's face like she was trying to find the girl she'd once loved. The stranger at the table cleared her throat, breaking the spell. "I'll give you 2 a minute," she said, grabbing her coat and slipping out. The silence stretched, heavy with everything they hadn't said. Harper's fingers twitched, wanting to reach out, to touch Lila's hand, to feel the warmth she'd spent years trying to forget. But she didn't. Not yet. "I saw your work," Harper said finally, nodding toward a painting on the cafe wall. A swirl of blues and grays like a storm trapped on canvas. "It's haunting." Lila's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. "That's one way to put it." She paused, then added softer, "I saw your article. The one about the opioid crisis. It was good. Brutal but good." Harper swallowed, her throat tight. Compliments from Lila used to feel like sunlight. Now they felt like a knife twisting. "Thanks," she muttered, looking away. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, tapping the windows like a hesitant heartbeat. "Why now, Harper?" Lila's voice was quieter now, almost pleading. "Why show up after all this time?" Harper opened her mouth, but no words came. She didn't know how to say she'd been running from this moment as much as she'd been chasing it. That every story she wrote, every city she fled to, was just a way to outrun the hole Lila had left in her chest. The cafe door jingled again, and a group of tourists bustled in, shaking off umbrellas. The noise snapped Harper back to the present. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice low. Somewhere else. Lila hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of her coffee cup. Then she nodded once sharp. Fine. But don't expect me to make this easy. Harper almost smiled. That was the Lila she remembered. Fierce, unyielding, and still capable of setting her world on fire. They stepped outside, the cool air biting at Harper's skin. The street was quiet now, the rain leaving a sheen on the cobblestones. Lila pulled her sweater tighter, her breath visible in the chilly evening. Harper wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the decade between them. But all she could do was walk beside her, their footsteps echoing in the silence, each step pulling them closer to a truth neither was ready to face. The park was a short walk from the cafe, its paths lined with oaks dripping with Spanish moss. The air smelled of damp earth and fading summer, and Harper's boots crunched on gravel as she followed Lila to a bench overlooking a small pond. The water reflected the last streaks of sunset, a bruised purple bleeding into gold. Neither spoke as they sat, the space between them electric, taut like a wire ready to snap. Harper's hands fidgeted in her lap, her journalist's instinct to fill silences warring with the weight of this one. She glanced at Lila, whose face was turned toward the water, her jaw tight. You didn't have to say yes to this, Harper said finally, her voice rough. To talking. Lila's laugh was sharp, almost a scoff. Yeah, well, I've always been bad at saying no to you. She turned, her eyes catching the fading light. What do you want, Harper? Really? The question hit like a punch. Harper leaned back, the bench creaking under her weight. She could still hear their last fight. Lila's voice cracking as she yelled, "You're choosing your career over us." The memory stung, sharp as the cold air biting her cheeks. I don't know, she admitted, her breath hitching. I saw you and it was like I forgot how to breathe. Lila's expression softened, but only for a moment. You don't get to do that, she said, her voice low, trembling. You don't get to walk back into my life and say things like that. Not after you left. I didn't leave you, Harper snapped, the old wound flaring. We both. Stop. Lila's hand shot up, palm out. Don't rewrite history. You left. You packed a bag and got on a plane. I stayed here, picking up the pieces. Harper's chest tightened, guilt and defiance tangling inside her. She remembered that night, her suitcase half-zipped, Lila's painting stacked against the wall, the sound of the door slamming behind her. I was 24, Lila. I was scared. I didn't know how to stay. And I did. Lila's voice rose, raw and jagged. You think I wasn't terrified? I loved you, Harper. I loved you so much it hurt, and you walked away. The words hung between them, heavy as the humid air. Harper's throat burned, and she looked down at her hands, scarred from years of restless pen tapping and late-night typing. I loved you too, she whispered. I never stopped. Lila's breath caught, a small broken sound. She turned away, her fingers digging into the edge of the bench. The pond rippled, a fish breaking the surface with a soft plop. Harper wanted to reach for her, to pull her close like she used to. But the distance between them felt like a chasm. 10 years, Lila said finally, her voice quieter now. I built a life here. A good one. I've got my art, my friends, a house with a garden I actually know how to keep alive. She gave a small bitter laugh. And then you show up, and it's like I'm 25 again, waiting for you to choose me. Harper's heart twisted. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, the leather of her jacket creaking. I didn't come here to ruin anything, she said. I saw your name on the festival lineup, and I couldn't not come. Lila turned to her, eyes searching. Why didn't you call? Right? Anything. Harper swallowed hard. Because I was a coward. Because every time I thought about you it felt like drowning. The silence that followed was softer, less hostile. The crickets had started their evening chorus, a low hum that filled the gaps between their words. Lila's hand rested on the bench, inches from Harper's. For a moment, Harper imagined closing that distance, feeling Lila's warmth again. But she didn't move. Do you remember the lake house? Lila asked suddenly, her voice distant. That summer we rented it? We'd stay up all night, drinking cheap wine, talking about forever. Harper's lips curved a reluctant smile. Yeah, you burned the pancakes every morning, and I pretended to like them. Lila laughed, a real one this time, soft and warm. You were terrible at pretending. They sat there, the memories weaving around them like the moss on the trees. Harper could almost hear the crackle of the lake house fire. Smell the charred pancakes. Feel Lila's hand in hers as they danced to a staticky radio. But the weight of 10 years pressed down. A reminder of all they'd lost. I'm sorry, Harper said, the words spilling out. For leaving. For not fighting harder. Lila didn't respond right away. She looked out at the pond, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she reached out, her fingers brushing Harper's. The touch was fleeting, barely there. But it sent a jolt through Harper's body, like a spark reigniting something long buried. Don't, Lila whispered, pulling her hand back. Not yet. Harper nodded, her chest aching. The sun had fully set now, the park bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. They sat in silence, the weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future hanging between them, as the night closed in around them. The art festival buzzed with life the next morning. The streets of Asheville packed with vendors, music, and the smell of fried dough. Harper wove through the crowd, her camera slung around her neck, snapping shots for her article. But her eyes kept drifting to Lila's booth, where she stood surrounded by her paintings, bold, swirling colors that seemed to pulse with emotion. Lila was talking to a customer, her hands gesturing animatedly, her smile bright but guarded. Harper's stomach twisted. She'd spent the night replaying their conversation, Lila's touch burning in her memory. She approached the booth, her boots scuffing the pavement. Lila glanced up and for a split second her smile faltered. You're working, she said, nodding at the camera. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Harper replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Mind if I take a few shots of your work? Lila hesitated, then shrugged. Go ahead. Just don't expect me to pose. Harper smirked, raising her camera. Wouldn't dream of it. She focused on a painting, a chaotic blend of reds and blacks, like a heart breaking in slow motion. This one's new, she said, lowering the camera. Feels angry. Lila's lips pressed into a thin line. It's called Aftermath. Guess you can figure out what inspired it. Harper's throat tightened. She wanted to ask, to dig into the pain behind the canvas, but the crowd pressed in, a family brushing past with sticky-fingered kids. The noise, laughter, a street musician's guitar, the sizzle of a nearby food truck, felt suffocating. She stepped closer to Lila, lowering her voice. Can we talk again? Tonight. Lila's eyes flicked to hers, wary but soft. I don't know if that's a good idea. Please, Harper said, the words slipping out, raw and desperate. She hated how much she needed this, how Lila still had the power to unravel her with a single look. Lila sighed, a soft, tired sound. Fine. My place. 8 o'clock. Don't be late. Harper nodded, her pulse racing. She spent the rest of the day distracted, her photos blurry, her notes half-hearted. By the time she reached Lila's small craftsman house, the sky was a deep indigo, crickets chirping in the overgrown garden. The porch light cast a warm glow, and Harper's heart pounded as she knocked. Lila opened the door, her hair loose, a paint-splattered apron over her jeans. The smell of turpentine and lavender hit Harper like a wave. You're early, Lila said, stepping aside to let her in. Couldn't wait, Harper admitted, stepping into the living room. It was a mess of canvases, books, and half-finished sculptures, but it felt like Lila, warm, chaotic, alive. A record player spun a soft jazz tune, the needle's faint crackle filling the air. Lila crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. So what's this about? You gonna apologize again? Harper ran a hand through her hair, the leather of her jacket creaking. I don't know. I keep thinking about you. About us. About what I threw away. Lila's expression hardened. You don't get to waltz back in and act like you can fix it. I've spent years rebuilding, Harper. Years. I know, Harper said, her voice breaking. But I see you and it's like no time has passed. Like I'm still that idiot kid who'd do anything to make you smile. Lila's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. You broke my heart, she whispered. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Harper stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of Lila's body. I broke my own too, she said, her voice raw. I've been running from it ever since. The jazz record skipped, a jarring note that matched the tension in the room. Lila's breath hitched, and for a moment Harper thought she might push her away. But then Lila's hand reached out, trembling, and brushed Harper's cheek. The touch was electric, a spark that set Harper's skin on fire. Don't do this unless you mean it, Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't lose you again. Harper's heart stopped. She leaned in, her forehead resting against Lila's, their breaths mingling. I'm here, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. And then they were kissing, a desperate, hungry collision of lips and tears. 10 years of longing poured into a single moment. Harper's hands found Lila's waist, pulling her closer, the world fading to the sound of their ragged breaths and the faint hum of the record player. It was messy, imperfect, and everything Harper had been chasing without knowing it. When they finally pulled apart, Lila's eyes were wet, her lips swollen. This doesn't fix anything, she said, but her hand stayed on Harper's arm, grounding them both. I know, Harper said, her voice thick. But it's a start. They stood there, tangled in each other, the night stretching out before them, full of questions neither was ready to answer. The morning light filtered through Lila's gauzy curtains, casting soft patterns across the hardwood floor. Harper lay on the couch, a throw blanket tangled around her legs, her leather jacket draped over a chair. The taste of Lila's kiss lingered, sharp and sweet, like the coffee cooling on the table beside her. Last night had been a whirlwind, kissing, talking, crying until their voices gave out. They hadn't slept together, not like that, but they'd fallen asleep curled up on the couch, their hands intertwined like they were afraid to let go. Harper stirred, the creak of the couch pulling Lila from the kitchen. She appeared with 2 mugs, her hair a messy halo, her eyes still puffy from tears. You're awake, she said, handing Harper a mug. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the faint tang of paint that clung to Lila's skin. Thanks, Harper murmured, her voice hoarse. She took a sip, the warmth grounding her. Last night was a lot, Lila finished, sitting on the armrest. Her sweater slipped off one shoulder, and Harper's eyes lingered there, remembering the feel of her skin. What are we doing, Harper? Harper set her mug down, the clink loud in the quiet room. I don't know, she admitted. But I know I don't want to leave. Lila's laugh was brittle. You say that now. But what happens when you get restless again? When some big story calls you to Tokyo or wherever? Harper flinched, the truth stinging. She'd spent a decade chasing deadlines, living out of suitcases, convincing herself it was freedom. But sitting here with Lila's lavender scent filling the air, she felt anchored for the first time in years. I'm not that kid anymore, she said, meeting Lila's eyes. I'm tired of running. Lila's expression softened, but doubt lingered in the set of her jaw. You can't just decide that overnight. People don't change that fast. Maybe not, Harper said, leaning forward. But I want to try. For you. For us. The words hung between them, fragile as the morning light. Lila sipped her coffee, her fingers tight around the mug. I have a show tonight, she said finally, changing the subject. Big gallery downtown. You should come. Harper's heart lifted, a small victory. Wouldn't miss it. The gallery was a sleek, modern space, all glass and polished concrete, packed with Asheville's artsy crowd. Harper felt out of place in her worn boots and leather jacket, but she didn't care. She stood in front of Lila's latest piece. A massive canvas of deep blues and golds like a sky on fire. The title card read, Reunion. Harper's throat tightened. She knew without asking it was about them. Lila found her in the crowd, her dress a soft green that made her eyes glow. What do you think? she asked, nodding at the painting. It's us, Harper said simply, her voice low. Isn't it? Lila's lips quirked, not quite a smile. Maybe. She paused, then added, I painted it after I saw you in the cafe. Couldn't sleep that night. Harper's chest ached. She wanted to pull Lila close to kiss her again, but the crowd pressed around them, voices buzzing like static. Instead, she reached for Lila's hand, a small, deliberate touch. Lila didn't pull away. The night wore on, filled with wine glasses clinking and critics murmuring praise. Harper stayed close to Lila, watching her navigate the room with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there 10 years ago. But every so often, Lila's eyes would find hers, and Harper felt the same spark that had set them ablaze last night. After the show, they walked back to Lila's house, the air cool and sharp. The streets were quiet, the only sound their footsteps and the distant hum of a bar's neon sign. You were amazing tonight, Harper said, her voice soft. I'm proud of you. Lila stopped walking, turning to face her. Don't say things like that unless you're staying, she said, her voice trembling. I mean it, Harper. I can't do halfway with you. Harper's heart pounded. She stepped closer, cupping Lila's face, her thumbs brushing away a stray tear. I'm here, she said, her voice fierce. I'm not running this time. Lila searched her eyes, then leaned into the touch, her breath shaky. They kissed again, softer this time but no less desperate. The world fell away, leaving only the warmth of Lila's lips, the salt of her tears, the promise of something new. As they pulled apart, Lila whispered, Stay tonight, please. Harper nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They walked the rest of the way hand in hand, the night wrapping around them like a second chance. The next week was a blur of stolen moments. Breakfasts at Lila's kitchen table, late-night talks sprawled on her living room floor, the record player spinning old jazz. Harper hadn't gone back to her hotel, her suitcase now a fixture in Lila's hallway. It felt reckless, like they were teetering on the edge of something fragile, but neither wanted to pull back. This morning they sat on Lila's porch, the air crisp with autumn. Harper sipped her coffee, watching Lila sketch in a worn notebook, her pencil scratching softly. The garden hummed with bees, the scent of damp leaves heavy. You're quiet today, Harper said, nudging Lila's foot with hers. Lila glanced up, her eyes guarded. Just thinking. This us, it's happening fast. Harper's stomach twisted. Too fast. Lila set her pencil down, her fingers smudged with charcoal. I don't know. I keep waiting for you to get that look. The one you used to get when you were ready to bolt. Harper leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. I'm not bolting. I told you I'm done running. Lila's lips pressed together, doubt flickering in her eyes. You say that, but you've got a life in New York. Career. What happens when your editor calls? When you have to choose? The question hung heavy, echoing their past. Harper's chest tightened, remembering the fight that tore them apart. Her ambition, Lila's need for roots. I'll figure it out, she said, her voice firm. We'll figure it out. Lila didn't look convinced, but she nodded, returning to her sketch. Harper watched her, the way her brow furrowed, the way her hair caught the sunlight. She wanted to freeze this moment, to hold on to the fragile hope blooming between them. That afternoon, Harper's phone buzzed. A text from her editor. Big story breaking in DC, need you there tomorrow. Her heart sank. She stared at the screen, the words blurring. Lila noticed, her pencil pausing. What's wrong? Harper hesitated, then showed her the text. Lila's face went still, her eyes narrowing. So what are you gonna do? I don't know, Harper admitted, her voice tight. It's a good opportunity, but I don't want to leave you. Lila stood, crossing her arms. Don't make promises you can't keep. If you need to go, go. I'm not gonna be the reason you resent staying. Harper stood too, the porch creaking under her boots. I'm not resentful. I want to be here. With you. Then prove it, Lila snapped, her voice breaking. Because words don't mean shit if you're on a plane tomorrow. The air crackled with tension, The bees hummed suddenly too loud. Harper's hands clenched, her nails digging into her palms. I'm trying, Lila. I'm trying to be better. Lila's eyes softened but her voice stayed sharp. Trying isn't enough. I need to know you're all in. Harper stepped closer, her heart pounding. I am. I love you. I never stopped loving you. The words spilled out, raw and unguarded. Lila's breath hitched, her eyes wide. For a moment neither moved, the weight of the confession hanging between them. Then Lila stepped forward, her hands cupping Harper's face, and kissed her hard, desperate, like she was trying to believe it. They stumbled back into the house, the door slamming behind them. The kiss deepened, hands roaming, pulling at clothes, the world narrowing to the heat of their bodies. It was messy, urgent, a collision of need and fear. When they finally collapsed onto Lila's bed, breathless and tangled, Harper felt like she'd come home. Later, as they lay in the dark, Lila's head on Harper's chest, she whispered, "What happens now?" Harper stroked her hair, the softness grounding her. "I'll call my editor. Tell her I'm taking a break. I'm not losing you again." Lila lifted her head, her eyes searching. "You mean that?" "I do," Harper said, her voice steady. "I choose you." Lila's lips curved, a small hopeful smile. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, the future uncertain but theirs to face together. Harper's call to her editor was brutal. The woman's voice crackled through the phone, sharp with disbelief. "You're passing up DC for what? A vacation?" Harper didn't correct her, just said she needed time. The line went quiet then. "Don't expect your desk to be waiting." Harper hung up, her hands shaking, the weight of her choice settling like a stone in her gut. She found Lila in the studio, a small shed behind the house, surrounded by half-finished canvases and the sharp smell of turpentine. Lila was painting, her brush moving in quick, angry strokes. "You okay?" Harper asked, leaning against the doorframe. Lila didn't look up. "You didn't have to do that. Quit your job." "I didn't quit," Harper said, stepping inside. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of paint and wood. "I took a leave. I meant what I said. I'm staying." Lila's brush paused, her shoulders tense. "For how long? A month? A year? Until you get bored?" Harper's jaw tightened. "I'm not bored. I'm here because I want to be. Because I love you." Lila set her brush down, her hands smudged with blue. "You keep saying that, but love didn't stop you last time." Her voice cracked, raw with old pain. "I can't keep wondering when you'll leave again." Harper crossed the room, her boots thudding on the wooden floor. She stopped inches from Lila, close enough to see the flecks of paint on her cheek. "I'm not perfect," she said, her voice low. "I fucked up before. But I'm here now and I'm fighting for this. For us." Lila's eyes glistened, but she didn't pull away. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "I do." "Then let me show you," Harper said, her voice fierce. She reached for Lila's hand, her fingers brushing the calluses from years of painting. "Let me stay." Lila's breath hitched and she nodded, a small, tentative movement. They stood there, hands clasped, the studio quiet except for the soft drip of paint from a brush left in a jar. Over the next few days they fell into a rhythm, cooking dinner together, sharing quiet mornings, navigating the fragile newness of their connection. Harper started writing freelance pieces, her laptop perched on Lila's cluttered dining table. Lila painted, her work softer now, the colors warmer. But the tension lingered, a shadow neither could fully shake. One evening they drove to a nearby lake, the same one they'd visited a decade ago. The water was still, reflecting the stars like scattered diamonds. They sat on the hood of Lila's old pickup, the metal cool beneath them, a blanket draped over their shoulders. The air smelled of pine and water, and the cricket's hum was a steady pulse. "Remember this place?" Lila asked, her voice soft. Harper nodded, her throat tight. "We were so young. Thought we had it all figured out." Lila laughed, a low bittersweet sound. "We were idiots." "Yeah," Harper said, smiling. "But happy ones." They fell silent, the weight of their past settling around them. Harper reached for Lila's hand, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of her palm. "I'm sorry I hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." Lila turned to her, her eyes shining in the starlight. "I don't need forever," she said. "I just need you to show up. Every day." Harper's chest ached, the promise heavy but right. "I will," she said, and meant it. They kissed, slow and deliberate, the lake's quiet lapping a backdrop to their quiet vows. For the first time, Harper felt like she wasn't running. Not from Lila, not from herself. The future was uncertain, but in that moment under the stars they were enough. Months passed, the seasons shifting from autumn's crisp bite to winter's quiet chill. Harper and Lila settled into a life that felt both new and familiar, like slipping into a favorite sweater after years in storage. Harper took on local freelance gigs, her articles now focused on Asheville's quirks. Its artists, its breweries, its hidden trails. Lila's paintings sold steadily, her latest series a vivid exploration of second chances. Each canvas a love letter to their fragile reunion. But the past wasn't done with them. One snowy afternoon, Harper found a box in Lila's attic while helping her clear space for a new easel. Inside were letters, photos, and a journal, relics of their old life together. Harper's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, Lila's handwriting raw with pain from their breakup. "I don't know how to stop loving her," one entry read, the ink smudged with what Harper knew were tears. She brought the journal downstairs where Lila was stirring soup on the stove, the kitchen warm with the smell of garlic and thyme. "Found this," Harper said, holding it up. Her voice was steady but her heart wasn't. Lila froze, her spoon clattering against the pot. "You read it." "Enough," Harper said, setting the journal on the counter. "Why didn't you tell me how bad it was?" Lila turned, her eyes flashing. "What was I supposed to say? That you broke me? That I spent years painting you out of my system?" Her voice cracked, the air heavy with the scent of simmering soup and unspoken hurt. Harper stepped closer, her boots scuffing the linoleum. "I didn't know," she said, her voice low. I thought you moved on." Lila laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Moved on? I tried. Dated other people, painted, built this life. But you were always there like a ghost I couldn't shake." Harper's chest tightened, guilt and love tangling inside her. She reached for Lila, but she stepped back, her arms crossed. "Don't," Lila said, her voice trembling. "I need you to understand. I let you back in, but I'm still scared. Every day." Harper nodded, her throat burning. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "Scared I'll mess this up again. But I'm here, Lila. I'm not going anywhere." Lila's eyes softened, but the tension didn't break. She turned back to the stove, stirring the soup with quick, jerky movements. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft hiss of the gas flame and the faint patter of snow against the windows. That night they lay in bed, the journal still a heavy presence between them. Harper traced circles on Lila's back, her fingers brushing the soft cotton of her shirt. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words a litany she'd never stop saying. "I didn't know how much I hurt you." Lila turned to face her, her eyes glistening in the dark. "I know," she said, her voice soft. "But you're here now. That's what matters." They kissed slow and tender, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise. The snow fell outside, blanketing the world in quiet, and for the first time, Harper felt like they might actually make it. The next morning they drove to a local diner, the kind with sticky tables and bottomless coffee. They sat in a booth by the window, watching the snow pile up outside. Lila reached for Harper's hand, her fingers warm against the cold. "I want to try something," she said, her voice steady. "A new painting. Both of us. Together." Harper's heart lifted, a slow smile spreading across her face. "What, like a portrait?" "Something like that," Lila said, her eyes bright. "A story. Our story." They spent the rest of the day in Lila's studio, laughing and arguing over colors, Harper's hands smudged with paint as she helped mix hues. It was messy and perfect and theirs. As the snow fell outside, Harper realized this was what she'd been searching for. Not a story to chase but a home to build. Spring arrived in Asheville, the air soft with the scent of blooming dogwoods and fresh earth. Harper and Lila's life together had settled into something steady, not without cracks, but strong in its own way. They'd faced the hard conversations, Harper's guilt, Lila's fear, the ghosts of their past, and come out stronger, their love tempered by honesty. Lila's new painting was nearly finished, a massive canvas that filled her studio with color. It was abstract yet intimate, swirls of blue and gold weaving together like two lives intersecting, breaking apart, and finding each other again. Harper stood in front of it one evening, her breath catching at the raw beauty. "This is us," she said, her voice thick. Lila nodded, her paint-splattered hands on her hips. "Took long enough," she said, a teasing smile breaking through. "You're not an easy subject." Harper laughed, pulling Lila close. "You're one to talk." They kissed, the studio quiet except for the soft drip of paint and the hum of a fan. It was a moment of peace, hard-won and precious. But life wasn't a painting, and their story wasn't tidy. Harper's freelance work kept her busy, but the pull of her old life lingered. An email from a New York editor arrived one morning, offering a book deal. A chance to tell her own story, not just chase others. It was tempting, the kind of opportunity she'd once have jumped at. But it meant months in New York, away from Lila. She showed Lila the email over breakfast, the kitchen warm with the smell of pancakes and coffee. Lila read it silently, her face unreadable. "This is big," she said finally, setting her fork down. "You should do it." Harper's heart sank. "You mean go to New York?" Lila's eyes met hers, steady but soft. "I mean follow your dream. But not alone. We do this together." Harper blinked, caught off guard. "You'd come with me?" "If you want me to," Lila said, her voice quiet but firm. "I've got my own work. Galleries in New York would kill for my stuff. We could make it work." Harper's chest ached, love and relief flooding her. She reached across the table, taking Lila's hand. "I want you with me. Always." They spent the next weeks planning. Harper pitching her book, Lila contacting galleries. It wasn't easy. There were fights, moments of doubt, the old fears creeping in. But they faced them together, their hands clasped, their voices raw but honest. The day they left for New York, they stood in Lila's garden, the dogwoods in full bloom. Harper's suitcase was packed, but this time Lila's was too. They looked at each other, the morning sun warm on their faces, and Harper felt a certainty she'd never known before. "We're doing this," she said, her voice steady. Lila smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "Yeah, we are." They kissed, slow and sure, the scent of flowers wrapping around them. It wasn't a perfect ending, life didn't work that way. But it was theirs, built on 10 years of pain, love and second chances. As they drove away, the canvas of their story still unfinished, Harper knew one thing for certain. Wherever they went, they'd go together. The road stretched ahead, full of unknowns, but for the first time, Harper wasn't afraid. She glanced at Lila, her hand resting on the gearshift, and felt home. Not a place but a person. Their love wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, messy, and worth every fight. And as the skyline of Asheville faded in the rearview mirror, Harper knew they'd write the rest of their story one day, one kiss